Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which is about the Maze Prison in Northern Ireland. For many people it may be something they don't know that much about because of the recent history of the province. But the book I'm reviewing is this book here. It's called The Maze Prison, and it's a hidden story of chaos, anarchy and politics. It's been written by Tom Murtagh OBE with a foreword by Phillip Wheatley CB, and it's produced by Waterside Press, quote, Putting Justice into Words. It's a very good book. I've given it a title, A Sober Piece of Criminological History which we would all prefer to forget. And that's the basis of our review. Let's look at the book first of all. It's a heavy one, it's a paperback. There we go, there's the front, there's the spine, and then there's the back. It runs to something approaching 800 odd pages. There's an index at the back, and at the front you can see the main front page there. Then you can see the table of contents nicely set out. There are a lot of detailed points making their way into the book. There's a publisher's note saying that the opinions are those of the author. Then there's detail about the author itself, and then there's some nice acknowledgement there. And I'll just leave you to read the dedication, which is there. And then you've got a list of illustrations. You've also got a list of abbreviations and so forth, which is, I think, very helpful, bearing in mind this is really a book which we're talking about as a piece of history now. You can see the various abbreviations. Then we get to the foreword from Wheatley, which is well worth reading to give you an idea of the perspective since 1969, running all the way through to date. Then you've got some detail about the prison itself. And then there's a preface talking about what has been going on over the years. And then we get to the main book itself. The preface has been written by the author. And then we then get to the beginning of the book, which starts off with chapter 1, a historical backdrop, and it runs through on that basis. There's a huge amount of information. You can see there's no paragraph numbering or anything, it's just standard text. And at the back, as I say, you've got a very useful index, and then there's a bibliography just before the index. As I say, it was a book that I thought would be well worth looking at, because I've certainly lived through the whole of the period of this is covered, and I remember the beginning of the Troubles and all the way through to where we are with the Good Friday Agreement and where we are today, and this is being recorded in the summer of 2018. Now, what do we say about the book? Well, as I said to you right at the beginning, for many people they will probably not know that much about the Maze Prison. It featured very strongly a few years ago, but is not something now that is particularly well known to many people. So this will be, I think, of great interest to historians, certainly politicians and lawyers alike. And what I say is this: Waterside Press are to be congratulated for the publication of this important work on the Maze Prison. It's been written by Tom Murtagh, and it's a hidden story of chaos, anarchy and politics. That's the description the book gives itself, which can also describe centuries of conflict throughout Ireland, because there have been massive problems, and even today there still remains a massive amount of difficulty. It's a province that many people have never been to. I've certainly been there. I actually love Northern Ireland, I have to say. I think it's a beautiful part of the world, but there are obviously problems which many people identify as being the fault of everybody else except perhaps themselves. That is again another problem, but we have to look at this, I think, dispassionately from an historic perspective. So do start by reading the foreword by Phillip Wheatley, who comments that this work should be, quote, compulsory reading for all those who play a role in ensuring that society remains cohesive and who are committed to defeating the threats posed by revolutionaries prepared to use violence to advance their cause. So, as I say, it's very sober reading. The book describes for a new audience, and that's my basic theme, how an establishment built to hold those involved in terrorism, atrocities, murder and allied crimes became a pawn in the partisan conflict that was Northern Ireland. And like many other political conflicts of one sort and another, basically much of it is insoluble. What then happened, of course, in this particular case was a breakdown of norms, values and control as the last of these shifted from governors to ministers, outside officials and even prisoners. An interesting jurisprudential point, if ever there was one. And this was followed again by the often random killings of prison officers and countless allegations, denials and obfuscations as prison rules came into conflict with claims to be treated as prisoners of war or to be given special category status. And I find that interesting because I think as history reviews this particular prison and what happened, it may come up with a different conclusion many years from now from the one that we currently have. And I say that because I think this book offers a very interesting illustrative example of what was going on. And the book, of course, has been described rightly as a social document par excellence. And it's a stark slant on the Troubles and the peace process. And the author cuts through the propaganda and base politics, in our view, to reveal the truth about the age blocks, hunger strikes, escapes and power struggles. As I say, for someone of my generation, we remember the reporting of it and all the difficulties, but we're now in a different arena, if you like, and therefore I think one can look at this history in a particular light of what has happened since. Murtagh has conducted detailed research based upon actual records and personal accounts, and it's a very interesting amount of work that he's put into this. He also challenges the myths and legends surrounding the history of the prison to give us a warning how easily a community can descend into what the author calls anarchy. And by that he means the specific criminological concept, which those of you who've studied criminology will know about, the anarchy theory. The book remains, I think, a most useful statement on applied criminology for all undergraduates. And as I said, actually, theoretical criminologists will also find it useful for the theoretical arguments. But I do believe it's a great addition to your library if you are criminologists. We do need more books like this because it is an invaluable record, as I've said, of one of the most dangerous prisons in the world. And of course, the day may come when society can develop a new way of dealing with offenders once our approaches change. But that day remains a long way off. But with this book, The Maze Prison, it reminds us of how not to do it, if I can put it as strongly as that. Now, the date of publication is cited at the 20th of February 2018, and I'm recording this in the late spring, early summer. There's the book again. You can see it. You can see the spine, and then you can see some of the information at the back. And as I say, there's a lot of substantial information. It goes through logically. It mentions all of the players. This is the second hunger strike in 1981. All of the problems that have fallen for successive governments to do. For instance, the dirty protest. All the problems which successive governments have had to face. As I said, you've got the historic beginnings and then a very detailed set of 21 chapters looking at exactly what happened. I'd like to thank everybody concerned. I've tried to make sure that this has been not a controversial review in any sense, because I'm looking at this very much from the point of view of the criminologist. And I'd like to thank all at Waterside Press very much indeed for publishing this book. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.